Every 2 weeks, money leaves your paycheck before you ever see it. It goes into a retirement account, a 401k, maybe an IRA. From there, it gets invested. Most Americans have a vague sense of this. They know they're saving for retirement. They know there are funds involved. Beyond that, the details are fuzzy. When most people picture investing, they imagine someone making decisions, an analyst studying earnings, a fund manager deciding to buy or sell, a bet of some kind on the future. Index funds don't work that way. The S&P 500 is a list, the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States, weighted by size. An index fund's job is to mirror that list. No decisions, no analysis, no bets, and because it tracks rather than picks, it can run at almost zero cost. That cost difference, almost nothing versus 1 to 2% per year, is the engine of everything that followed. In 1976, a man named Jack Bogle launched the first index fund available to ordinary investors. The financial industry called it Bogle's Folly. For years, they were right. Almost no one bought it. Then the data started accumulating. Over 10 years, then 20, the evidence became difficult to dismiss. Most active fund managers didn't beat the market after fees. Meanwhile, something else was changing. Through the 1980s and 1990s, American employers quietly shifted responsibility for retirement savings from themselves to their employees. Tens of millions of ordinary Americans were now making investment decisions. Most of them weren't financial professionals. They needed simple, low-cost options. The index fund was both. Then came 2008. The financial crisis didn't just wipe out portfolios. It destroyed the credibility of active management. In the aftermath, investors looked at their fees and asked what they were paying for. Money poured into index funds. Fees compressed toward zero. By the 2020s, passive index funds held more U.S. equity assets than active funds for the first time in history. 3 firms rode that wave further than anyone else. To understand what they became, follow a single dollar from your paycheck. Your employer deducts a portion of your salary and sends it to a retirement plan administrator, a custodian that holds the account on your behalf. You log in, see a menu of 10 to 30 investment options, and choose one. The default at most employers is an index fund. That fund is managed by a fund company. In most cases, one of 3, BlackRock, Vanguard, or State Street. Your dollar goes to them. They combine it with the dollars from millions of other accounts and use the pool to purchase shares. Not shares of one company, but shares of all 500 companies on the S&P 500 in the correct proportions. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, ExxonMobil, JPMorgan, Walmart. Your dollar buys a tiny fraction of all of them simultaneously. Now multiply that dollar by 160 million retirement accounts. Do it every 2 weeks. For 50 years. Look at what's on the other end. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are now among the largest shareholders of nearly every major public company in the United States. Not some companies, not one sector, nearly all of them. Pull up the top shareholders of Apple: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Microsoft, same 3 names. ExxonMobil, JPMorgan, Bank of America, Alphabet, Amazon, Walmart, Pfizer, Lockheed Martin, Coca-Cola, Chevron. Same 3 names at the top across every industry, in company after company after company. Together they manage over $20 trillion. BlackRock alone manages more money than the GDP of every country in the world, except the United States and China. They didn't acquire this position through takeovers. No committee approved it. No one decided it. It is the output of 50 years of individual Americans choosing the cheapest retirement fund available. The pipes became the owners. Ownership comes with rights. When you own stock in a public company, you have a vote. Once a year, companies hold shareholder meetings. Board directors are elected, executive pay is approved, proposals go on the ballot. Every share is a vote, and whoever holds the shares casts them. When a fund holds stock on behalf of millions of investors, the fund votes, not the individuals. You don't vote those shares. BlackRock does. Across the S&P 500, the big 3 collectively hold between 20 and 25% of total shares. In 2021, a hedge fund called Engine No. 1 owned roughly 0.02% of ExxonMobil, a position so small it barely registered. They ran a campaign to replace 3 members of Exxon's board of directors, arguing the company's long-term strategy was creating financial risk. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street voted with them. Engine No. 1 won all 3 seats. A fund with almost no ownership position changed the board of one of the largest energy companies in the world. Through votes that came from the retirement accounts of ordinary Americans who had no idea this was happening. The mechanism can also run the other direction. In 2016, Wells Fargo was caught creating millions of fraudulent customer accounts, opened in customers' names without their knowledge. At the following shareholder meetings, BlackRock and Vanguard voted against the re-election of directors who had sat on the Risk Oversight Committee during the years the fraud occurred. Directors were voted out. Wells Fargo replaced its CEO and rebuilt its board. A board that presided over systemic fraud was held accountable by the shareholders it was supposed to serve. A reasonable question follows from all of this. If three firms hold this much of the market, why don't they control everything? The answer is that BlackRock doesn't own your retirement account. You do. By 2023, all three firms had begun pulling back from the activist posture they had built over the previous decade. BlackRock withdrew from major climate investment coalitions. Vanguard followed. The retreat wasn't ideological. It was a recognition that aggressive proxy voting was generating legal and political exposure that was difficult to justify under fiduciary law. The lever is real, so are its limits. Bogle's idea was to democratize American capitalism, give ordinary people a seat at the table. It worked. Fees collapsed. Hundreds of millions of people got access to markets that had been practically out of reach. Millions of people now own American capitalism. Three firms voted. That's the machine Bogle built.